Dinnie, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Dinnie and Virginie, the podcast. Yes, welcome to yet another episode of Dinnie and Virginie, the podcast. And on today's episode, we are on episode 14, and this episode is about baking. So, this episode is one of those what to do when there's nothing to do in the great, great state of Virginia. First of all, there's always something to do in the great, great state of VA. Second of all, baking. You could bake. That's an option. That's a viable option here in the great, great state of Virginia. You can turn to baking. Now, when I say baking, I'm saying this because today I spent literally all day in the kitchen baking up Guyanese pine tarts because that is what I chose to make for a project that I have on the background as Dinnie IRL. So I made Guyanese pine tarts, and the problem was typically I make them with someone else, but I did everything by myself today. So it was an all day affair. However, it was an all day affair. So I had nothing planned for the day. I had one event that I was potentially going to go to, but like baking literally took me all day. So if your schedule is cleared, I'm talking nothing, zilch, nada. You have no idea what is going on that day. Baking is a good option because it's going to take some time. Even some of the easier recipes, well, I guess if you're not accustomed to it, it's going to take some time. If you're like professional at this, maybe it won't take you as long, but it just depends on the recipes. So, for example, I chose Guyanese pine tarts. So, you don't, even if you're bad at baking, like I would call myself, I'm not a cook. I'm not good at cooking or baking or anything in the kitchen. I just survive. I get by. But I've gotten progressively better as long as I stick something out. For example, baked mac and cheese. First many attempts, absolute trash. It has caused me to cry. However, baked mac and cheese today got compliments from the family and it felt great. So it's just the practicing and the iterations. And so if you think you're bad at it, you probably are. But the good news is if you're strong enough to stick with it, you'll get better. And not only will you notice, but those around you will notice. And they will also appreciate all the wonderful baked goods you'll send to them because that's a good thing. It makes people warm, you know? It makes them feel good, makes them feel nice. Getting like surprise baked goods, like surprise, here is a basket of bread. I've never been surprised that way, but I am open to it and I'm about to manifest it sometime in the near future. Someone is going to provide me with a basket of homemade bread. And not all the crunchy ones, because it hurts my teeth. But yeah, baking is a very, very viable, real option if you're trying to figure out what are you going to do that day. I would say maybe don't go for creme brulee, or something like that. Maybe go for a cookie, an easy cookie, the easiest cookie recipe you can find and start there. But if you're chefing it up, why don't you whip out one of your best recipes? Oh, another thing I wanted to talk about is the good thing about baking is that I would highly recommend you find a relative that you know for a fact has some banging recipes, right? They made some great bakes or pastries or family. They're like the family baker, representative baker. If that's you, congratulations. But find someone who's more old school, who's been in the game longer, and ask them if they have any recipes that you can try. My grandmother has been trying to get me and my sister to bake from her Guyanese cookbook for a while now, and it's just very intimidating. So we've been putting it off, but I think this is the year where we're actually going to take her up on the offer because I believe we're capable now. And now that we've made both Guyanese pine tarts and beef patties, we're definitely up in our game. So I'm not as intimidated by it anymore. And it's just a way for you to feel closer to your friends and family. If, for example, you have a friend who bakes it up and you ask them, hey, what's the best recipe for this? And you do it and you love it, that'll just make them feel good. Like, hey, I gave them a good recommendation. I think I don't know, baked goods just make people feel good. They make me feel good at least. That's why they're called baked goods. Oh, zing. So yeah, if you're ever in a state of wondering, what am I going to do in the great, great state of Virginia? There's nothing to do. First and foremost, you stop, you pause, You breathe and you say, wait a second, there's always something to do. I could bake something. I could bake cookies. I could bake cake. I can bake tarts. I can bake, what else can you bake? Cupcakes. That's a subcategory of cakes. Brownies. Like, the possibilities are endless. Bread. Like, guys, the the options that you have in baking, crazy. And like I said, just pick a recipe that takes up the amount of time that you want to take up for your day. It doesn't have to be an all-day affair, but it can be an all-day affair depending on how difficult the recipe is or how large the batch is. You could just say gung ho and charge and just make the most giant batch of cookies or bread rolls or cupcakes or huge sheet cakes that you can possibly imagine, the most that you've ever done, and just be like, for this one day, I'm just gonna marathon some bakes and I'm just gonna give them all away. You'll probably feel great. To be honest, you'll feel great. So yeah, just baking. Let me know, like, what are you guys baking out here in the great state of Virginia? Do you have any family recipes? Do you have a favorite go-to recipe? Is there a favorite bread that you like? A favorite dessert that you like to bake? A favorite type of cake that you like to make? Personally, as far as baking is concerned, I have attempted Guyanese recipes because it is in my blood, even though I was born here. It is the only thing that helps me feel a bit more linked to that side of my family because, yeah, I'm as American can be. So I tend to go to Guyanese pine tarts. I've made tennis rolls before. I have not mastered bread. So those have varied results. That's why the pine tarts have fairly they've gotten better and better. My last batch was my best batch. The one that I just did actually was not the one before that, rather was my very best batch that I ever made. And I thought I wrote down what I did and I didn't. So I had to use the same recipe that was not quite right. But we're going to get there. Remember, practice makes perfect. But baking occupies your time. It helps you stay focused because you got to figure out, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing? You have to prep. Oh my gosh, you have to prep. I guess depending on what you choose to bake, the prep work was taking a long amount of time. And also, you don't have to bake by yourself. You can make this a group activity. You can bake with a partner, you can bake with your kids, you can bake with your parents, grandparents, especially grandparents. Your grandparents will love to bake with you more than likely. Just being in the same space with you as you're baking or asking their opinion, like, hey, what do you think about this? Does this consistency look good? Sometimes it can cause fights because I have witnessed fights in the family when it comes to the women in the kitchen of the family asking older women in the kitchen of the family. But that's just tradition. So it's still a memory. A memory is a memory, and baking creates wonderful memories. So yeah, if you're ever wondering, what am I going to do today? You can bake something. That's all I have for this episode of Dinnie and Virginie, the podcast. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in the future. So until next time, Dinnie out.